What is Western civilization? Those of us who talk about it assume that everybody knows what it is and that it is in danger. And it made me think of a word that I briefly couldn't remember, and that word is etymology, which means the origin of words. So, really, civilization comes from the Latin word civilis, meaning citizen, meaning member of a city-state. And when you think of city-states, we think of Athens, we think of Rome, we think of Troy. Modern equivalents would be Singapore. They are city-states. And city-states were a development from country living. Once upon a time, people were nomadic. They would roam around eating stuff and really settle on a particular territory and basically use it up and then move on to find somewhere else to feed on and use up and move on and so forth. And then they discovered agriculture and became settled and lived in villages, which became towns, which eventually became city-states. So, bearing in mind how far humanity has come, I don't think Western civilization will run out of cities to live in, except that it might not be so pleasant if these cities are full of crime and chaos. But this could be fixed by the right moral system. I only mention this because there are lots of words that we can't quite define, and I suppose not many people really care about the origins of words, and when they can't define a word, they think, well, people like us just instinctively know what it means. Even if we can't define it properly, words such as nationalism and national interest and all these big words that we take for granted. But it is important to know the true meaning of words. It's a lawyerly pursuit to talk in a perhaps fussy way about the meaning of words. So while I don't think we need to worry about the end of Western civilization, Western civilization as we know it is always about to end because it keeps changing, whether we like it or not, whether we are all the same race or not. Change happens and we have to accept it because we can't stop ourselves from growing older and things happening that we may not wish. But I don't think there's any danger of Western civilization disappearing. It's just equality of life in these cities that some of us might be concerned about, pensions and savings and security and law and order. And these things could, in theory, be improved or deteriorate very soon. And the only way to improve these things is to use moral systems. and nobody seems to understand it. It's very puzzling. Perhaps there's an inability to talk about ideas is a symptom of the moral degeneracy that I'm always complaining about. As I've been saying, moral systems are basically rule systems. They tell you to do something and never do the other thing. And this is really all we need to know. Now, some moral systems are clearer than other ones. But liberals like unclear moral systems. So you'll find liberals going to Buddhism because they think they think only clever people understand it, because clever people can talk about things endlessly without really saying anything. And I'm afraid there are too many people like that. But Western civilization is a nebulous concept, yet is full of symbols and political positions. So when people talk about the end of Western civilization as they know it, they are really talking about liberal democracy and Christianity. And I think really the culture of fornication that they instinctively associate as being Western, singles bars, Tinder, free porn, Hollywood sluts, that kind of thing. Gratuitous scenes of violence and sex that are completely superfluous to the plot. That would be another feature of Western civilization, the gratuitous sex scene inserted into a novel or a film or a TV program. And some ideas are so pervasive as to be inseparable from people's concepts of themselves and their civilization. And when you propose the ending of an aspect of it, it becomes alarming. Because for some people, that's what they think of Western civilization. It's going to bars and picking up girls and whatever young people do on Tinder and other applications to do with meeting and dating. It's also associated with Grindr. I believe that Tinder really came from Grindr, which is a gay app for gay men to meet each other and to find each other attractive in a very easy way, to swipe left if not found attractive and swipe right if found attractive. But what was Western civilization built on? It's surely not just single bars and Tinder and casual sex and all the things that we're so familiar with now. Western civilization, after all, goes back a long way. 2,000 years of Christianity, pre-Roman civilization, as well as Roman civilization, and before that, Greek civilization. So it's not just Tinder and singles bars and that sort of thing. So when people talk about this despairing way about the end of Western civilization as they know it, They are talking in political terms about ways of thinking, such as thinking of fornication as fun and part of the culture, which is Western and something they are proud of and reluctant to give up. But I'm saying it is part of the problem. It is. It is something that has caused a certain state of affairs that will eventually result in chaos and collapse. I think I'm the only one who has diagnosed what I say is a disease. Some people may not think it's a disease. Some people think it's the way to be. And the people who agree with me would be those who are religious, who know that sexual relations are only permissible within wedlock. And really, this is the sticking point that many will not accept without a degree of coercion, I suppose. They cannot believe that their sex life has anything to do with the end of Western civilization. They do not make that association. They deny that association. They refuse to accept it, even if true, unless forced to. And so there is this problem of merely submitting to truth and logic without any particular principle, because we find that however silly an argument, somebody will be able to find an argument for doing this silly thing. And it might sound superficially convincing, and people who want to do the silly thing won't question it too much. And those who have an argument against it might sometimes be ignored, even though their arguments are perfectly cogent, simply because it's unpopular. But the thing about civilization, whether it be Western or Eastern, is that it requires a certain ability to organize in human groups. They have to obey rules to make their city-state viable. And if they don't, then life would deteriorate in that city-state. And it really is as simple as that. And I suppose when things get bad enough, passions will boil over and people will avail themselves of the most obvious solution that is rational and moral, assuming they ever get to the stage of being prepared to discuss what morality is. And so you see that although there are, in theory, all these academics who call themselves philosophers, no one seems able to discuss these things at all. Particularly these philosophers who actually have jobs because they'd be too afraid of losing their jobs through saying the wrong thing. And this is really the problem, that nothing is fit for purpose, and soon we will discover that in a very big way. And there will be trouble. Christine Ramsay wants to use this as an opportunity of doing down Muslims. It doesn't really matter. The point is that if there are lots of female, attractive, young Ukrainian refugees who are female, then the women, Western women, Western European women would find them objectionable. And if they were men, then Western men would find them objectionable. The point is that nobody wants any more foreigners coming to their country of whatever race. That much is clear. But unfortunately, the process known as democracy has been very unresponsive to their needs. It's very easy to pretend to ask people something, and when they make their choice, you can say, well, that option is no longer available. And people will have to like it or lump it. But the point is that eventually they will get so annoyed that they will overthrow the system. Particularly after life gets bad, well, gets worse very rapidly as things are about to become. And when things get bad, then lots of, old stuff will be taken out with the trash, such as liberal democracy and Christianity. And we might as well make the most of it, because it's not every day we get a momentous revolution as big as that, or the American, the French, and Russian revolutions, which were violent. But they all made the same point. They made a point of rejecting Christianity and absolute monarchy. We've already heard of the 3 strikes and you're out rule. It's ironic, though, that Westerners haven't even understood their own history, that really Christianity cannot be reformed. The Reformation began in the 1500s, and now we're in the 21st century, and Christianity, well, it's kaput and it can't be reformed. So when will the penny drop? When will an honest and rational Westerner accept that it has to be Islam because there's nothing else? You can't start cooking up a religion when you need one. You have to avail yourself of one that's already in existence, or you won't get the necessary moral authority to have it obeyed widely. So those nationalists who think they can cook up a religion, if they think they can revive the Greek or Roman pantheon or the Celtic pantheon and start worshipping Wotan again, well, I suppose they enjoy the idea of creating their own religion and fancying that they can play the role of high priests. But the reality is that any new religion just doesn't get respect for hundreds of years. It took Christianity over 300 years to be adopted by the Roman Emperor. Islam took about 100 years to establish itself across the Middle East. So if you're going to go for that sort of thing, it has to be Islam. And it is inescapable, I think. It's such a simple message, really, that I can't believe that it still hasn't been completely understood. But I think really people do understand it. They just pretend not to understand it so they don't have to engage about the rights and wrongs of it. So we needn't worry about Western civilization because nothing much is going to happen to it other than a change of religion and a change of political system, such as the change from liberal democracy promoting feminism and intersectionality to a one party theocracy. Just as there will always be an England, there will always be a West, because it's just a geographical expression of a defined continent with people living in it. So unless there is some mass extinction, such as a comet falling on us, a really big one, life will probably carry on in cities across the West, except that there will be decline and criminality and chaos. So we hope we don't become like South America. And there is a way of preventing ourselves from becoming like South America, where kidnapping is the norm, stabbings, casual violence, mental illness. The solution is so very obvious. It is only the pride of Western chauvinists that prevent them from adopting my solution or even discussing it. I think it was Aristotle who said that political problems are really problems of morality. So if you get people who are fundamentally dishonest and don't care if they believe in nonsense and have no principles because they don't even know what a principle is, because they have been never taught about any system or morality. Christianity cannot be just an unbelievable story and the practice of eating chocolate eggs at Easter and overeating at Christmas and over drinking in the run up to it. It has to be more than that. But now I rest my case that Western civilization would continue to exist even if we did become a one-party theocracy governed by the principles of secular Quranism.